building a $7-figure, $1 million practice. What would it look like if you could build that? And we're going to walk you through exactly how to build that practice right now. Specifically, it's simple, not easy, but simple. Yes, I was very fortunate and blessed to have tremendous growth and great success in practice very quickly.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
Hey gang, we're psyched to be here with you today. We're psyched to get into the math of building a 7-figure practice. We're going to show you how simple, not easy, how simple it is to build the $1 million practice. We're going to show you stepwise, what does it look like when you start breaking down the metrics and how you can get your practice, your business to that level, even if you're starting from scratch inside of 3 years, 36 months. Dr. Pete, I know that you did this in your first year of practice, man, but you are a freak. I'm psyched that we get to share this with the rest of the chiropractors listening here today, because we know what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs right now is more successful chiropractors.
You know, the first thing I was thinking about was, the business plan. Imagine the chiropractic business plan. You come out of chiropractic college and you this is your plan. We're about to give you the business plan. You bring this to any investor and you tell them this is what I'm about to do. They're like, I'm in. They're going to be in. So what I love about this is it, guys. I mean, this is rubber hits the road. So whether you are, because I know there's some students out there listening, so I'm talking to you right now.
We see you out there.
Yeah, our eyes are on you. And I've had a few calls with some of you, so I appreciate you guys reaching out, and it's been good connecting. And by the way, if you ever want to connect with myself or Dr. Stephen, you're a listener to this podcast, we always tell you, hit us up. We got all of our ways to reach us in the notes, and you can hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, jump on our email list and reach out to us. But anyway, so I've had a lot of good conversation with docs in school. And this is some of the things that you guys are asking about. Like, hey, how can you help me launch my practice? How can you help me build a remarkable practice? And I say, what do you want to do? Just tell me what your vision is. What's success look like? Let's help you get there. So I'll tell you, we're about to lay out a vision for you. Doesn't have to be your vision. It's a vision. It is a awesome vision. Building a 7-figure, $1 million practice. What would it look like if you could build that? And we're going to walk you through exactly how to build that practice right now. Specifically, it's simple, not easy, but simple. Yes, I was very fortunate and blessed to have tremendous growth and great success in practice very, very quickly. But I will tell you, working with so many of you, what I love to see is just that we're just steady, consistently doing the right things over time. We see that incremental growth, and we build that scalable, durable, remarkable business. That's what we're talking about here today. Dr. Stephen, I'm pumped up. I love this conversation. I'm looking forward to digging in today.
Yeah, man, this is Moneyball, right? So I'm sure everybody has seen that movie, right? So it's not about swinging for the fences. It's not about trying to hit that home run or grand slam. It's about getting on base, right? So, and being really consistent. So something that we teach inside of our Remarkable CEO program is that consistency is the new intensity. And that's really going to be the theme. This is the story. Now, you can ramp things up and you can go faster and further than what we're describing right now. But what we want to do is we want a particular framework that helps you get your head around it, right? So you can see it, right? So, and if you can see that this is something that's so achievable, like that 7-figure practice is so achievable. And, the reality is you're talking to a couple of guys who have done it and now have done it in multiple businesses, multiple times, right? So it's about being super consistent and framing out this model and executing, right? So good ideas are great. That's what we're going to share with you today. But execution's everything, right? So Peter Drucker taught us that. So, we're going to go super high level first. But, Pete, I can remember back as, I generated 35, 40 new patients a month just on referrals from day one, like right from the beginning of practice. And I didn't have any money. I had a whole bunch of debt. Camilla and I had probably $500,000 worth of debt between the two of us in student loans, and then another, $250,000 of debt in business loans, et cetera, right? So, there was just there was just a lot of empty pockets going on. And between time, energy, focus, and money, all I had was time, energy, and focus, right? So that went into generating new patients by making sure that everyone knew who I was, who we were, what we did, and why we did it, right? So it was about telling the story and generating all kinds of energy and excitement around referral. So don't tell yourself, well, I don't have the money that I need to generate this new patient. So you know what? You've got the time, you've got the energy, you got the focus, and you've got the message, right, that these people need to hear in your community right now. There's no shortage of sick and suffering people in your community. We know that to be true. So the question is do they know you are there? So you'll step into that energy, pull them into your practice, tell them the truth, and change their health trajectory.
Yeah, so we're gonna reverse engineer the practice. We're gonna actually do it forward, but we're reverse engineering this. So you'll see we're gonna break it down. What we are inspired by is using real numbers. So we're going to use real numbers today as we break this down. We're not pulling numbers out of the hat. We have visibility into hundreds and hundreds of practices around the world. We're going to use real life numbers. We're going to use real standards, and we're going to show you how in 3 years you can build from scratch a 7-figure practice. We're going to show you exactly how to do it, and we're going to make it really practical for you, because what we have found is the power is in net momentum. And that's what we're going to be leaning into on this episode here today, is we are deconstructing a 7-figure practice. But I'm telling you right now, if you are at 0 today, our expectation is that if you follow through with what we have laid out for you, and we're going to lay out right now, in 3 years, you'll give us a phone call and say, hey guys, thanks so much for that. That was really good. I now have a 7-figure practice.
Super That's cool. I just crossed $1 million, right?
Yeah. So for all of you who take us up on this, hey, make sure you reach back out in 3 years to let us know you did it. So Dr. Steven, I know that you want to walk through just the practice of it, and we'll break it down as we go. So yeah.
Yeah, for my note takers, right? So let's scratch down some numbers here, right? So let's talk about, from a monthly perspective, if you were to attract 30 new patients into your practice, right? So in other words, 30 new people showing up for a day one in your practice. Let's start at that. So consistently, month in, month out, 30 new patients. They go through your conversion process, day one, day two. Day two, they say yes to your recommendations for care. Let's say out of those 30 new patients, 20 of them say yes to your recommendations. In other words, they become an active patient, right? So that's a 66 or 67% conversion rate, right? So now we started with 30 new patients. We now have 20 that say yes to your recommendations for care. You're now at 67% conversion rate with 20 new active patients. That's the good news. That month, that's the good news. The bad news is that month, 10 people went inactive in the practice, right? So let's imagine that it's not those out of those 20 necessarily, right? There may be a onesie twosie that month who dropped out of care, but from the entire active patient base, you had 10 people go inactive during that same month. So now we had 20 new people join the practice, and we had 20 patients leave the practice. So 20 minus 10 is a 10, or a positive 10 net momentum, okay? What we call net mo. So your practice, your active patient base grew by 10. So that's a positive 10 net momentum. So if you have a positive 10 net momentum, month in and month out, you do that for 3 years, that's 36 months, that gets you 360 active patients. When you have 360 active patients, regardless of the technique that you follow, the recommendations you're giving, you're easily up and over a volume of 400 patient visits a week at a collection visit average of $50 for 50 weeks. You're sitting at $1 million plus. Dr. Pete, man, we can break this thing down starting with 30 new patients, 20 conversions, 10 net momentum, 36 months in a row with that gets you to 400 visits plus at a $50 collection visit average. 50 weeks a year, we're at $1 million plus in under 3 years.
So I'm so energized by this because I can see it so clearly. I don't know if everyone listening is able to see it as clearly as we are. So we want to unpack it a little bit more. If you didn't listen to the previous episode, by the way, I would highly encourage you to go back to that episode, which is the previous episode. And we talked about churn rate. So I would encourage you to go to that so that we're not going to lean into that here. But we are going to revisit it briefly when we get into the net momentum, because in order to understand net momentum, you also have to understand churn. So you have to understand the episode we covered where we define those things. So there are specific criteria that we addressed. First thing is new patients, guys. So let me just put it out there. 30 new patients a month. What do you guys feel about that? Like, do you feel like that is a lot of new patients? New patients in our definition means they have completed a day one. Okay, that's the definition of new patients. It's not people that are in your books that you're hoping are going to come in, who booked in from a Facebook campaign and ad that you're running, that right now about 63% of those people actually show up. That's not new patients. Those are leads. Okay, new patients are the people who have come in and actually completed a day one in your office. That is a new patient. So we're saying for this example, 30 of them. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this is very, very achievable. If you look at over the course of a month, if the month it has 20 to 25, let's call it 22 days of practice, and you take that number, you're averaging less than one new patient per day. Or just over one new patient per day, one new patient per day. You should build a practice that you have on average one new patient a day. You should be able to do that. We need to build a practice that is able to handle one or two new patients per day. And I believe all of you right now are nodding your head saying, yeah, 100% Dr. P, I can do that. So the first thing is, can you consistently create a practice that does 1 to 2 new patients per day? If your average open 20 to 22 days per week, you would need to have that to be able to hit the number of 30 new people actually coming in and completing a day one. That's the first step. So I just wanted to pause there, Dr. Stephen, just to start, because we have to start at the top to make this work all the way down. So you have to grasp that number and say, Dr. P, you know what? We can do that. I can do that. I am doing that. But you need to be able to take hold of that, because for this equation, it would need to work out that way.
And if you view the new patient inflow from 3 tributaries, right? You're talking about internal referrals, you're talking about external activities, and also your digital activities. So you've got internal new patients coming in, external new patients coming in, digital new patients coming in. Maybe you're getting 15 referrals and 8 and 7, right? So maybe it's 20 and 10 and 0. So you just have to look at it as where are new patients coming in? You should be well diversified here in your marketing so you can predictably have new patients coming into the practice every single day, every single week. And by the end of the month, you look back and you're like, yep, we did 30 day ones.
And then from the day one, and Dr. Stephen, you gave an example of 67% conversion rate. So let's say you had 20 people, commit to care, but you had 30 new people complete a day one. Let's say 29 of those people actually went to a day two and completed a day two. Let's say you had, one person fall off the apple cart between your day one and day two, and they said it's not the right time, and you let them go, right? That number, 29 of the people that show up to your day two, 20 of those people who were presented with a care plan after reviewing your recommendations for care and reviewing their goals and what brought them in and going through all of that, 20 of them said, I'm in, sign me up, put me in. Here's my credit card. Here's my schedule. Let's do this. 20 means they've committed to your recommendations or the doctor's recommendations for care. It doesn't mean they're going to just try it out. It doesn't mean they're going to kind of pay as they go. We're not counting those people as true conversions or committed patients. A committed person, there's 3 criteria. Number 1 is they have accepted and agreed to the doctor's recommendations for care or plan for care or care plan. Number 2, they have scheduled out and mapped out their future visits. The visits that they're recommended to have, they have been mapped out. Those are written in the schedule book, put in your digital schedule book. And the third is they are paid up or they are paying up. They have a card on file or checks on file, however you do it in your practice, or they have paid for their care plan or care package, however you're doing it. That is done. So there's 3 criteria for someone to be a committed patient. They're following the doctor's recommendations for care. They've got those visits mapped out. They are paid up. That number we're saying right in this case is 20. So you've got 20 people who have committed to care. That's the second piece of the puzzle. Now, the third piece, Dr. Stephen, is what we talked about a bit in the previous episode. I'll throw it back to you on this. This is net momentum. So you've added 20 people to your active roster. You've added 20 new people. You've added to 20, but you have had a net momentum of plus 10. So what does that mean? What does it mean if we've grown by 10, even though we've added 20? What does that mean? It means some people have had to go. What does that mean? It means people are dropping out of care. Dr. Stephen, I'm going to throw it to you. This is where the definition of knowing what is active and inactive comes in, And this is where the net momentum comes in.
Okay, so net momentum, let's sidebar conversation on this to be able to calculate net momentum. And this one's wicked tricky. This is one, I mean, we do a lot of metrics with our coaching clients, and we consistently get this kind of feedback when they're doing their vital signs is, man, my team struggles with net mo or net momentum, right? So because there's a lot behind it, but it's critically important. You got to get this down, guys. I'm telling you, the juice is worth the squeeze on this one, right? So you got to keep an eye on, is my practice growing? The growth lives in net momentum. If your practice is shrinking or contracting, you got a negative net momentum. Okay, so net momentum is calculated by saying the number of new patients that have joined your practice plus any reactivations, people that have come back to care, right, and recommitted to care. That's the numerator. So these are the new human beings that have joined your practice, right? So new people that last week or last month they were not active in your patient in your practice, they are now active in your practice. I'm a new patient who has converted, plus anybody who has reactivated, right? So if you need some help with your reactivation, go back a couple episodes. We did a whole episode just on reactivation, what that means, and campaigns, etc. So now we have a numerator of new committed new patients plus reactivated patients. That's the numerator. Those are the new humans joining the practice minus people that have dropped out of care. So people that have gone inactive. Now we have 5 criteria for people that are inactive. It's assumed that they were at one point active and now they're going inactive, right? So 5 things. Number 1, they tell you, I quit. Number 2, they move away or die. Number 3, they've missed 3 appointments or more, right? So in the Remarkable practice, that's our standard. If they've missed 3 appointments without communicating to you, right? 3 in a row, they're ill communicado, right? Everybody's like, I don't know what happened to that person, right? So make them inactive, right? Because they're not following the doctor's recommendations for care. Number 4, fourth criteria is they have not been in the office for 30 days or more. In the Remarkable practice, we use 30 days as our standard. With your technique, who knows? Maybe you're doing HIO, upper cervical specific, whatever, and you're like, I only see my patients every 6 months. Great. So you need to adjust that for 6 months, right? So figure out what the number is that makes sense for you clinically, okay? And whether they're actually following your recommendations for care or not, right? So in our world, it's 30 days. More than 30 days, you're just not actively following the doctor's recommendations, so you're inactive. And number 5 is we've fired them as a patient because they're out of integrity with an office policy. Remember, the office policies are in place to protect their experience, their guardrails, right? To protect their experience and their outcomes. It's a way of keeping integrity, right? So Dr. Pete, we need to let go of some of the attachments that we have. I know I carried that burden, man. I was always disappointed if somebody didn't convert. I hated when people discontinued, right? So I would be that one telling stories, making excuses and every reason in the book. And my team would look at me and be like, Doc, get over it. Let it go. Yeah. Let's just make them inactive. If they come back, we can reactivate them. But right now we need real numbers because the only thing worse than no data is the wrong data.
So my Achilles, my pain on this one was I didn't want to think about the people that were leaving. So my thing was like, I'm just going to go get more new ones. Also doesn't solve it. Doesn't fix it either. I tried that for so long. Like, well, that's fine. Forget those people. I'm going to get more. And I just denied the fact. I was like, what doesn't matter? I'm going to get more new patients. So
just bail faster. We just got to bail the water faster.
Yeah, and I'm going to convert them too. And this time we're going to keep them. We're going to get it right this time. So how long are you going to do that, Dr. Pete? So, at some point we have to just, brutal facts, face the facts. This is the reality. So again, we pressed into that last episode, but I love this. So what we're saying is, guys, listen, here's the deal. Live in reality. You started 20 new people between your new patients starting care, your reactivation starting care. Let's say you, with all of that and the allowance, listen, there's an allowance. There's a grace period. You have grace on your practice. You can let people go. It's okay because we've built in with a net momentum of 10, a positive 10. Think about this. As long as you're bringing in enough people and you're starting enough people and reactivating enough people every month, and some people are going to drop out of care, are going to go inactive every month. That's a reality. As long as it's 10 greater, that's a net momentum of 10. And you do that consistently over time. With what we just laid out for you, you're building a 7-figure practice in under 36 months. So just attach yourself. That's a vision story. You talk about the vision story. That's a vision story. and you're getting specific. And the more clear you are, more vivid you are, the more likely it is to happen. So you've got a 10 plus 10 net momentum. So you've given yourself the grace. The reality is some people are going to go. We can be less emotional about it because we've built it into our formula, our business plan. We know it's going to happen. No, we don't. We will take a plus 14 month and we'll swallow this plus 7 month. We'll be really struggling with a plus 5 netmo month, and we'll be pissed at a 0 netmo month. But we will use that energy to
or a negative 3, right? If you have a negative net momentum, it happens.
We had a negative. It happens. Exactly, guys. But here's the thing: long game. See the game. See the long run. Look at where you're going, and pay attention to the details. Because I'll tell you what happens is if you don't pay attention, you have a negative netmo, and you don't realize it, and you don't fix that 3 months back to back netmo at 0 or negative, you're in a rough spot, friend. And it happens to the best of us. It can happen to you. It's happened to me. It's happened to Dr. Steven. It's happened to all of us. Where you're like, man, what happened this last quarter? I'll tell you what. we're going to do team training 5 days a week, baby. We're getting back on the horse. Something is off, so we're going to train on this. So, Dr. Steven, this is just a brutal facts conversation, but it's exciting to me because if you do this and now you have 350 active patients, we're not telling you how frequently they're coming in, visits per week, based on what we know in the remarkable practice, in the wellness club, in the corrective care stage, in the initial intensive care stage. If you broke those down and took that 350 and you divided them in the right amount of parts per, our number of 400 a week is pretty conservative.
It's conservative,
actually.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a conservative number. We're not. Yeah. So
there's no stretch here whatsoever, frankly.
100%. Yeah, it is so doable. So you're at 350 active patients at a positive 10 netmo consistently. This is the key. Consistency over time is the key. It's like that compounding interest. It's just consistency. You do this positive 10 mo every month. That's your marching. That's your song you sing. That's what you and your team are focused on. You do that consistently over time. You have built a 7-figure practice in 3 years. You can take your existing practice right now. You've been in practice for 25 years right now. And you say, you know what, Dr. Pete, Dr. Steven, I'm doing it. Next 3 years, I'm building a 7-figure practice, starting with the numbers we're going to start tracking now. Do it. You can do it. Dr. Steven, I'm pumped up about this.
This makes it so achievable, right? Because initially, if you're standing there and you're looking up this mountain of like, we're going to build a 7-figure business. Wow. Especially if you're at the bottom of that mountain, right? So, but if you break it down and you look at every single one of these steps and you say 30 new patients a month, do you think we can do that? Yes. Do you think that we can convert at 67%? Yes. That brings us to 20 active new patients. Do you feel like we could keep a net momentum of 10 and only lose 10 per month, 10 people go inactive, 10 or less? Yes, I believe we can get there. So if we do that consistently over those 36 months at a $50 collection visit average, now that means we have an intelligence around how we set our payment plans, right? So make sure that your CVA averages out. You don't want to take the legs out from underneath the finances. So looking at your payment plans, make sure that collection visit average lands at 50 or around 50. And then you've got a 400 patient visit, volume here. So there's plenty of wiggle on both sides of both of those, the volume and the collection visit average. It gets you over the 50 week. It gets you to that $1 million practice, right? So ultimately, Dr. Pete, this is an equation. It's the $1 million practice deconstructed. It comes down to metrics, and man, ultimately, practice growth comes down to a math problem, right? So we all know that there's human beings behind these numbers, right? And we're on purpose, and we know that money follows value. So the impact that we're making in our community is the money. That is what we're measuring. And the power in these metrics, they're not for bragging rights, right? So what they are is they're giving us direction around where we need to be investing the time, energy, and focus and money of our business. Where should we be investing in our marketing? Where should we be investing in our team building? And most importantly, where should we be investing in our training?
Please stick around for more business insights from this week's bonus interview with our remarkable success partner, dedicated to helping you more successfully help more people. Enjoy. All right, CEOs. So as promised, I am here today in the studio with a new friend of mine, a colleague of mine who I've been hearing about over these past, let's call it year and a half, since I know we've been working with your company and you've been serving so many of our doctors, especially in Australia. I am honored to have with me today in the studio, Dr. Omar Ayouby, an amazing chiropractor. He's been a chiropractor for 2 decades. Can you believe it's already been 20 years for you, man? I mean, time flies when you're having fun. An incredible doctor, chiropractor, and also radiologist. So it's not often you meet a chiropractor who's also licensed as a radiographer, but he is. And so, Doc, before we get into some of the questions that I have for you and how you're helping doctors use leverage to function as CEOs and create a bigger impact, a greater income in their businesses, tell us a little bit about you. What would you want us to know about you? Again, I told the audience just a little bit, but anything else you'd want us to know? And then I'm gonna grill you a little bit here today. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Pete, for that. I really appreciate this opportunity and your time. And so I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today really it appeals more to the Australian-based chiropractors. The business that we run appeals to them rather than your US audience. So just to give it a little bit of context. But yeah, I'm Omar Ayouby, qualified radiographer and chiropractor. Been a chiropractor since 2002, 2003. It's been a long time, so I'm forgetting the years now. And yeah, so it's been about 20 years, and time does fly. And I'm thinking more about that every day. Yes, time does fly. And so we started, our chiropractic business is the back clinic. We started that in 2003. And then in 2013, we started Innate Radiology, which is Innate Radiology is a teleradiology service for Australian chiropractors. We provide that service Australia-wide, and that started in 2003. And we've been running it ever since then. And as you've already mentioned, I do have a radiography background as well, and that gave me insight into the radiology field. And being a chiropractor, I merged those two fields together, and we're helping a lot of Australian chiropractors with that background.
So I love this, and I love talking to an entrepreneur, and it's very clear to me right now, and I think our audience, and hopefully a lot of the US who heard you say that are sticking around, because this is going to be awesome. This is a great interview, and I want them to hear from you because you're a CEO who is innovating, and you've created a business. And we always say a business exists to solve a problem. That's what exists if for someone else. That's what it exists for. So let me ask you, so you were inspired at some point to launch this business. So here you were, 2002 and 3, launched the back clinic. You guys are going, serving, saving lives. All of a sudden, 2013 comes up. Talk to me about that. What's going on? What's going inside of your entrepreneurial brain that made you decide, okay, I'm going to launch another business? Take us through that problem solving. Like, what are we going to go after? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love the entrepreneurial thing. I really love it. This is what I think about. Is what I talk about every day with people, right? So I love it, this entrepreneurial spirit. So what was it with me? So I was a qualified radiographer first, right? That was my undergraduate degree, and we did chiropractic as a postgraduate. And while I was studying chiropractic, after I'd finished a radiography degree, I was working as a radiographer in medical centers, in hospitals, and I gained an insight into how chiropractors and other practitioners, but how chiropractors, because I was studying chiropractic at the time, were able to refer for radiology exams, right? Now in Australia, we've got these services, the radiology services, paid for by the government. It's a Medicare program. So so in the Australian context, patients, citizens of Australia get their X-rays paid for by the government. So I'm working as a radiographer. I'm seeing that, hey, chiropractors can refer for X-rays. The patients are coming in, they don't have to pay for it, right? And I'm thinking, hang on a second. So this is while I was studying chiropractic, I was able to go, hey, hang on a second. There's something going on here. There's a referral thing going on here. The patients are getting the service for free. And I was already thinking before I had even graduated as a chiropractor, hey man, I've got something here. The chiropractor can refer. If the chiropractor had their own X-ray machine, and in Australia, you know, some chiropractors do have their own X-ray machine. They're able to take their own X-rays. They can refer. And if I can bring Medicare into the chiropractic profession and allow chiropractors to bill the government for this service, I think this is a win-win for everyone, the customer. And if I can remunerate the chiropractors somehow, it's a win for the chiropractic owners or their businesses, because obviously they're making money out of this. So it's a win for all parties, the customer, the business owner. It's a win for us where we're able to provide this service, and everyone's winning out of this. So this all came about while I was studying chiropractic and working as a radiographer and getting insight into that field and how the government is paying for that service that the chiropractors were already using.
So you didn't start it right away. So you finished your chiropractic studies and you started your practice, but it was almost a decade later before. So you were taking your own x-rays in your clinic, and you're in the back clinic, you were marking and analyzing your own and doing your own reporting. So it took about, almost a decade before you launched this. What was that? What was kind of what had to happen for you in your business, your first business, before you were able to launch the second business?
Yeah, so being a young, so I'm 44 now. So if we go back 20 years ago, I was 22, 23, 24 by the time I graduated from chiropractic. Being a 24-year-old, I was young. Even though I had the idea, I didn't have confidence. I really, so if I think back at myself 20 years ago, I lacked a lot of confidence. I had no experience. I had no family members in the business of radiology. Even though I was working in radiology, there was no one to go to with that. So what I was doing for that first decade was using my contacts within the radiology field, or some of the people that I used to work with had their own radiology business set up. And I made an agreement with them. I had a working relationship with them. I said, hey man, look, I'm going to take my own x-rays. How about, you do the reporting, you've got the radiologists already. You've got the whole setup, you've got the whole infrastructure. How about I use your infrastructure, and you remunerate us a small fee for that, So that was the setup for the first decade. I didn't have confidence. I didn't have the experience to go up to radiologists and propose this idea to them, and I didn't know how to remunerate a radiologist. I didn't even know how to negotiate terms with them. So that was happening for the first decade. So it wasn't until 2013 when I had the confidence, then probably in my mid-30s, to actually say, hey man, hey look, maybe I can set this whole thing up myself. Maybe I can set up this whole infrastructure myself. So I think it was a lack of confidence. That's probably what it was. Wow. In the early years.
I also think, like you said, it's a lack of confidence, but it's also at the same time, like you were building up your relationships in the market, you were studying the market, you were also owning your profession, knowing that the clients that you're going to be serving moving forward were your own colleagues as chiros. So you were going to be serving them. So it gave you an opportunity to, like you said, build the relationships with others in the community there, but it also enabled you to put your 10,000 hours in chiro and really become a chiropractor who built a business. And now, because to open a second business of any kind, that requires a lot of time, energy, focus, and money. I mean, and here you are already leveraged because you're in your business. So I just love having this conversation with another entrepreneur, because again, it just goes to show, like, even if you don't have confidence, eventually, if you have a vision, you can, you like stay with it. Don't give up. I love that you held on to it for 10 years and then you decided to take it. So now you've been doing it for 10 years. So let's fast forward a little bit and bring you up. Now we're in 2022. So now you've been running the back clinic for 20 years and Innate Radiology for 10 years almost. So one of the questions, that I have today is, so how are you helping specifically if I'm a client? So I'm a chiropractor. Okay. I am.
Yeah.
And you're Innate Radiology. Like, what's it look like for me if you were to say, hey, I'm going to hire you or use your services in my clinic? Cause I have a clinic, I have an x-ray unit. What does that look like for that conversation for me as a doctor who's not using Innate Radiology? Why would I take that next step in working with you? And how are you helping me be more successful and help more people? I'd love to hear how that discussion goes.
Yeah, Pete, yeah, you're right. After that confidence, it wasn't just a lack of confidence. You're right. It does take time to build up the networks and to build up, the knowledge and intelligence. So you're right. So since 2013, we've been helping a lot of Australian chiropractors. And what we bring to the table is we say, look, man, Dr. Pete, you're already referring for x-rays, right? You're already referring for x-rays. How about you join us, our team? You be a part of our team, and we pay you for a service that you're already using. And the payment that we're making is, we go, hey, look, Dr. Pete, you've got the infrastructure already set up in your office. And if you don't, for the chiropractors that don't already have their own x-ray facility on site, we can help you with that, right? So that's another added thing, part of our business. We help chiropractors. We make it so easy for them to set up a radiology clinic within their own chiropractic practice, and we make it the most cost effective. So part of that time, a lot of time went into building those relationships, and I've got those relationships with some of the x-ray suppliers, and we've been able to provide chiropractors with the most cost-effective radiology setup. So we help with that and accreditation and all those things. So the chiropractor really doesn't need to do much. They don't even need to know anything. We bring all that to the table: the intellectual property, the know-how, the experience, the cost-effectiveness. We're adding dollars to the chiropractor's bottom line, and we're benefiting your patients, Dr. Pete, right? So rather than the chiropractor charging $150 for an x-ray, in the Australian context, I can say, hey, Dr. Pete, why don't you provide that service to your patients free of charge, and focus their attention more on them investing into their chiropractic healthcare, right? And on top of that, we have a team of radiologists that provides you, Dr. Pete, with the radiologist report, which gives you confidence, assurance that no pathology is being missed. There's no liability on you. So it's a win for you, it's a win for the patient, it's a win for the business. So we bring all of that, the know-how, cost effectiveness, money, save patients money and time. That's the business model.
I mean, at this point, I'm thinking, all right, why would we not be set up with you and doing business together? I mean, it makes zero sense, other than if a doctor might say, all right, we're going to charge more for our x-rays, and we're going to have our patients pay us out of pocket more than maybe your company could ever be able to, pay us for that. I mean, that'd be the only thing. So to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you've taken all of the risk out. You have, you've obviously provided the highest level of service. You have professional radiologists doing the reporting. I mean, from that perspective, to me, it's a no-brainer. So in my opinion, we've just got to make sure that we reach every chiropractor in Australia who either has a unit or doesn't yet, and let's make sure we get them set up with one. I mean, you guys had the whole thing set up. So last question is this. So we always think in terms of the 4 limited resources. You probably heard us talk about that. This, all human beings, including CEOs, have 4 limited resources. We all have a limited amount of time. We all have a limited amount of energy, a limited amount of focus, and a limited amount of money. I mean, and so I've heard you tell me that you directly address the money component. You've taken that out of the equation by saying, hey, we're gonna pay you to take x-rays in your facility, and we'll mark them for you. Energy, hey, it takes a lot of energy. I know for me in my office, like, we did more of a CBP model. So we were taking a lot of films and pre and post films, all this stuff. Like, if you were to tell me, hey, we would help you with that, like you take the x-rays, we'll take care of like assessment, analyzing, and all that, and giving you a thorough report on that. That'd be massive for me as an example. So think about saving me time and energy and focus. It's huge. Or my associate doctors who are doing that. Now you freed me up and my associates to go do the thing that we need to be doing, which is growing the chiropractic business, serving more people at the table, growing the business. I mean, to me, when I think in terms of ROI, that's where my mind goes. Talk to us about that. Like, when you think about, I mean, do you have visibility into your practices? Once they hire you, are they growing? Are they seeing more people? Are they growing since they start working with Innate Radiology? I'd love to know, like, what kind of some of the results have been for the docs and the clinics that you've been able to help.
Yeah, man. ROI, the most important question of all, right? So we've already covered things like, saving the chiropractor, the energy, the time, the focus. We take all that guesswork out. We run the operation. We help them run the operation. We help them set it all up. So that's all gone. In terms of return on investment on money, look, our chiropractors, we've got chiropractors all around Australia. I can track, what they're doing, the numbers that they're doing, and they are all growing, right? At the very least, year upon year, I see chiropractors just maintaining their volume. That's the very least. No chiropractors are going down. I mean, this business model works. It's a win. It's a win-win. It doesn't go backwards, right? So return on investment, we see things like, so let's talk real numbers. To do a setup in Australia, it'll cost the chiropractor for a brand new setup installed, fully functional, operational, under $70,000, right? That's a whole radiology setup for a chiropractor, under $70,000. Our chiropractors are making a return of, I'd say 40% minimum to 100% per annum, right? So that's the ROI, 40% minimum to 100% per annum paid monthly, right? So when you look at something like that, Dr. Pete, if you're a chiropractor in Australia, the number one investment right now is what we're talking about. There is hardly any investment out there in the market that offers a 40% to 100% return paid monthly per annum, right? When you look at real estate, you look at Bitcoin, you look at the stock market, they're all highly speculative. You need to borrow a lot of money. It can go down anytime. We're talking about a business that pays you cash flow every month, and it makes a return of 40 to 100%. I mean, these are real numbers, Dr. Pete, that I can, I keep track of these things. I keep track of these numbers of all our participating chiropractors.
Amazing. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Last question is a bonus question. How do people get in contact with you? How do they learn more? I know we're speaking specifically to, the Australia doctors here. And I know all you US doctors who are probably like me listening, like, how come we don't have anything like this here in the United States? Maybe there's a business opportunity. We need to figure it out. But
Maybe.
I love what you're doing. So yeah, how do we get more in contact with you, more information?
Yeah, easy, man. Just call me on my mobile number. I think it's +61 414 34 98 98, or just email me, omar@innateradiology.com.au.
Awesome. Well, Omar, thank you again for who you are and what you're doing to help advance our profession, help more chiropractors, help more people, help our CEOs build more remarkable practices so they can have more remarkable lives, having businesses that don't compete with their life, but complement their life, and ultimately help us make a bigger impact and a bigger income. And it's not all at the expense of our own selves or our team. So I appreciate you. Thank you for what you're doing for our profession. Keep up the great work. And I look forward to connecting with you, hopefully here in the near future when I get over to Sydney, Australia for one of our upcoming events. And I look forward to meeting you in person. And for all you remarkable CEOs, appreciate all of you. And I look forward to being with you again next week on the next episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Until then, take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.